I don't want to keep you guys waiting. Obviously, we want to try to see if, like, as more people are arriving, so we're gonna have like a very slow start to warm you up. Thanks again for everyone who has come. If you don't know what WalletConnect is, WalletConnect provides you with the ability of connecting to multiple wallets remotely and not just have the browser extension. So if you're familiar with MetaMask or even with a mobile app that has a little dApp browser, it allows you to inject a provider that will allow you to have the wallet expose some accounts, and then those accounts are used for you to know which addresses the user has, and with that you can actually sign transactions and messages, right? So that's kind of the core concept from it. And what WalletConnect has enabled was basically to make it more interoperable and expand beyond the world of just the desktop browser or even the mobile dApp browser, and just have this remote connection be anywhere. The first experience that we created was with a mobile wallet connecting to a desktop computer, and you would have complete separation between the wallet and the dApp. So we basically created an end-to-end encrypted channel or end-to-end encrypted chat that allowed you to have to any wallet to connect to an application. And that would look like, for example, if you go into our registry, we have more than 100 wallets. Like, you can go through all the pages in here. But even if you choose a dApp like Uniswap, you would have the ability of actually connecting your wallet. And when you go into the WalletConnect, you actually pop up this QR code, and you bring one of your wallets, and you scan the QR code. You go into the QR code scanner. And as you go to the QR code scanner, you get prompted to connect your wallet into the application. It knows which website it's connected to, and it's asking you to approve it. So when you actually do that from your phone, it sends a message back, and that message sends the accounts. So essentially, WalletConnect is a messaging network with a very specific purpose. So let's say we wanted to buy like 100-inch, and then it's going to fetch the best price, and then you confirm that you want to swap it. On my phone, I received a message, this needs to be approved, and it happens immediately. And in order for this to happen, you have basically a service in the background just relaying encrypted messages, and these two parties are talking to each other. So in this case, I'm actually going to cancel, and you see that the swap has failed because I canceled. There's more than hundreds of dApps and 110 wallets right now supporting WalletConnect. But in order for us to actually reach this adoption, we had to make the experience of connecting your dApp to your wallet much easier. And one of the things that we created is this open source project called Web3 Model. You might have seen this screen before. It's, I would say, a very popular screen nowadays. And this drove a lot of the adoption for WalletConnect because it did one thing that nobody was doing, which was, how do I allow the user to select which option they want? Everyone just made the assumption everyone's just going to use MetaMask or use like a dApp browser. But then I actually wanted to make it easier for them to actually select WalletConnect. So I created a library called Web3 Modal, which in a sense says it's a Web3 modal because it displays a user with a modal to select which Web3 provider you want. So this will be compatible with either Web3.js or ETHJS, depending on your preference. Personally, I would recommend ETHJS. Nothing wrong with Web3.js, but ETHJS is really, really good. So it will save you a lot of time. And how does it work? You go into NPM and you install Web3 Modal. And when you install Web3 Modal, then you have to see the provider options section. The reason for this is because when you add to your project, you're going to have this library, Web3 Modal, that you can even configure which network you want. There's some optionality for the provider and everything. And then this part here, when you say connect, it abstracts the user selection. It will handle when the user is displayed with a modal. It will display that for you. It will handle when the user failed. For example, they went through the process of connect to MetaMask or WalletConnect, but for some reason failed. It will throw an error. But at the end of the day, it just says, here's your provider. And then you could take that provider and inject it into Web3 or ETHJS. So I have actually an example here of source code that uses Web3 model. It's literally the React app, like boilerplate with the button that says connect. Can you imagine what it's going to do? It's going to display the Web3 model magic. And so this is interesting, right? Because then you have the option here of actually selecting MetaMask, or you can cancel it, and I can go into the Wallet Connect, and you're abstracted from that whole experience. And then when it actually is successful, it will just replicate and say, oh, look, you're connected. And there's this address here. And I have this button, Authenticate, which signs a message. And then you will see it pop up on my phone, which actually shows like this one wants to sign a message. And then I actually sign it. And it will, this is such a simple example that the signature is here. Like, you know. And the signature is here. So basically, I've been able to connect my wallet to this, and I can do the same experience on MetaMask as well. Actually, I have to clear storage. Boom, boom. All right, so we repeat the same experience with MetaMask. Sorry. Because MetaMask is like unlocked. Don't look at my password. All right. MetaMask, and it's authenticated. And then you actually see the message, and it signs, and Web3 model works exactly the same. So how would you go into the process of doing this? The most important thing to consider is that Web3 model is an abstraction, but then we don't want, when you install Web3 model, that all of the 20 providers are in your app. Then your app would be like 20 megabytes big. Like, you need to actually have some consideration that they need to be installed separately. So we made this ability of actually configuring which providers you want. And sometimes providers have options of their own that need to be injected. So the first step that you need to take is actually import Web3 model that we saw that you need to install. And in this case, we're going to support MetaMask and Wallet Connect. The reason MetaMask doesn't need to be configured is because it's a browser extension, so it's already present in the user. And Web3 model will detect whether MetaMask is there. And if it's not there, it doesn't even give it the option. So Web3 model abstracts that logic for you, and you don't need to configure anything. For Wallet Connect, you have to install Wallet Connect Ethereum provider. And then from the Wallet Connect Ethereum provider, you can create a Web3 model object, which you can see here. And I passed the network to be mainnet. Cache provider. Cache provider is an interesting feature that has become more and more popular, where you actually cache the user selection. So next time the user comes to your app, they don't need to select that model over and over again. It will just default to the provider that they used before. So for example, if you use MetaMask, then when you come back, it will use MetaMask because it knows your browser has been to MetaMask. And in the provider options, you basically put the provider that you want, and you pass it the package. So you have to inject the package. This is what makes it like a lighter library, because you only install Web3 model and Wallet Connect provider side by side. And in the case of Wallet Connect, you actually have to pass like an Infura ID. And here I actually use like environment variable, which is a good practice. You guys do it more often. But it's a hackathon, so you don't have to do it. One of the things that's really important to do when you actually integrate with this is that you have to listen to events. Like, for example, if you're familiar with the EIP 1193, if you're not, then I'm going to actually teach you about it. The reason Web3 model is actually possible is because there's a standard called 1193, or Ethereum Provided JavaScript API, that defines that every wallet provider will follow this API. So Web3 model was able to support more than 20 providers because we all agreed how the providers are going to look like. And these providers have a lot of definitions and everything. But you know what? In Web3 model, we explain it more easily. We just say that you have to use these events. These events are very important. The first event shows when the accounts has changed. Like, it's a very common pattern for Ethereum wallets that the user can select which accounts are available to the application. And if that were to change after the connection, then you can actually listen to this event, and you can see that the data that it's passed is an array of accounts. And the second one is the chain change, which is very useful, especially in the pattern of multi-chain EVM and everything, because if you want to use a layer 2, you tell the user, hey, can you switch to Optimism or Arbitrum or something like that? And it will show you the chain ID, and you can update your app and say, okay, now we're on this chain. And then you have also connect and disconnect in the case of MetaMask, you don't actually have that, but like some wallet providers use remote connections. Even Coinbase Wallet has this. So in case there is a disconnection, you actually have this event happening, and you can handle that state. You can even have like a, I don't know, like a little red indicator. Oh, your wallet is offline, and then your wallet is online. So it's a really good pattern to follow there. But the most important things that you have to consider is that when you get the provider, you can just inject it into the Web3 that you want. So there's sometimes when you're in a hackathon, it's good to just write vanilla JavaScript and not have a React app. We also have an example for that. So you can actually follow the vanilla JS example, and you can see how it actually handles this. In the case we have like Wallet Connect and Fortmatic, you still pass the provider options here and everything. And you can see how it's used in Web3, where you can get the chain ID, and then from the chain ID, we even have this library to get the name of the chain and everything. You get the accounts, and then you have to listen to the actual changes for the accounts change. Change. There you go. Wow. So here, see, like you have to provide their own accounts change, fetch new account data, chain change, fetch new account data, network change. Network change was deprecated. This no longer exists. But now you still have to listen to these. So these are the most important things when you're connecting to a wallet. Also, another thing to consider that I think not a lot of people consider is like the disconnection, because while you can't really disconnect in MetaMask, you can actually disconnect on Wallet Connect and other providers like Coinbase Wallet. So from the dApp, you can actually have the user like block that connection and not have it connected anymore. And the way you can do that is by calling provider close, and if you're using the cache provider, you actually should clear the cache provider, because if you're caching the provider and that was just a page that reloaded, then it's important. But if the user specifically disconnected the provider, then in that case, I would recommend that you clear the cache provider at that point. And honestly, I think that pretty much covers all of the basics. I think it's also useful to review the documentation. For example, on Wallet Connect, you can go to docs.walletconnect.com, go to Quick Start if you're building a dApp, then you go here. You use the Web3 provider for your Web3.js or ETHJS, and we tell you how to install it. And we have a setup that can use both Infura or a custom RPC, where you can use, like, for example, Alchemy nodes or some XDAI or some Arbitrum. You can use whatever you want with Wallet Connect, and you can customize it over here. You enable the provider. This is what Web3 model abstracts you from, so you don't need to do this part. But then obviously you have to do the events for 1193, and then you have the methods to request. What I was going to say is that like there's some particularities about the ETHJS and Web3.js. So Web3.js existed before and worked in a very specific way. So they actually have a much cleaner integration here. But then when you use ETHJS, you have to make sure that any Web3 model provider needs to be wrapped as a Web3 provider before being passed into one of the contract classes or wallet classes. Yeah. I would love to hear questions.
How do you do to show the model before?
The model?
Yes.
Oh, so for the user, right? Yes. So the model is very abstracted. So when you actually go into, Let's go into the documentation of Web3 model. This model is displayed in this part, Web3 Model Connect. So you can have your app, you configure your provider options, and you instantiate the Web3 model object. And then whenever you want to get, you could assign this to the connect button. The connect button that we saw in the React app would call this Web3 model connect. And that would open the model for the user. And the user would do the whole process. So different providers will have different processes of how they authenticate. But once it's finished and complete, then it would return you an object. And it would just say, here's your provider. Now you can actually go into Web3.js or ETHJS and just add it in. So this process will open and close the model for you, and it will also handle the success and failure states of different providers, and you just need to, you know, build your dApp, which is your job. You know, the experience of Web3 model is really developer focused because we want to make sure that you have to think less about things that don't really matter. There's so many Web3 providers out there. Like literally, when you see provider sections, you go into provider section here. There's all of these options. And then inside, for example, Wallet Connect or Coinbase Wallet, like you open it, and then you have like, oh, for Wallet Connect, you install the Web3 model, and then you have to configure it like this and have to pass the Infure ID, and then it shows see full options for Wallet Connect Web3 provider in the case you actually want to go to Wallet Connect documentation and configure even further. But this is like the basics for the Wallet Connect provider. And if you were going to go like with the Coinbase wallet, then it has like a separate document that actually provides you here with how you would actually do it. But they all follow the same pattern of you have to install an extra package, inject a package into the provider options of Web3 model, and then pass some optional or required parameters. Yes?
Sorry to ask about Web3 modal again, but is MetaMask the only extension-based wallet that's automatically populated?
This is a good question, because actually it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact that it's an injected provider. And if you want to dive into source code, we're going to do it. So there is actually, when I say MetaMask, I actually mean injected providers. We actually have here a massive list of injected providers. MetaMask just happens to be the first one that existed. Gnosis Safe back in the day actually had a provider that was a browser extension that would actually inject. Nifty Wallet also exists that is an injected provider. So that first option of the injected provider would actually be configurable, automatically displayed, based on the injection. So if you go to, I don't know, for example, Status Wallet, and you open the dApp browser, the Web3 model would detect it and just change the logo to be Status. But 90% of the times it's MetaMask. That's why I keep saying MetaMask, because it's easier. But actually, if you go through, there's actually a lot of injected provider wallets out there, and it will change the logo based on the one that's available to the user. So that's why it's automatically there, because you could think of it as like injected wallets are user installed, and these are developed, and the other ones are developer installed. So it's up to you to do the configuration rather than the user have to do it themselves. But yeah, for example, you see Brave, the browser, has their own browser extension, and they also have their dedicated logo. So when you open this modal over here, instead of saying MetaMask, it will say connect to your Brave wallet, and it will show the little Brave logo. Other questions?
There is an example app with the list of all providers available as a working app. Yes. Do you have something on GitHub or somewhere?
So to rephrase your question, is all the providers' options in there configured into the Web3 model? Actually, I've never done that. It will look crazy. It will start scrolling through it. Yeah, it will scroll. It will start scrolling. So I would not recommend that, honestly. I think, like, at the end of the day, as a developer, you have to think what's your target user And you have to kind of just pick. Like, for example, I personally picked this because I found this to be a good combo. You have like the desktop users, and then you have the mobile users, and then you have like the users that don't know what the wallet is, so they can just use Taurus, which now it's called Web3 Off. They're downstairs. They renamed. I have to rename this. And then you have Coinbase Wallet, right? Like, so this is like very popular options. So that's the ones I usually configure, but I've seen like some of them with like 8 providers at once, you know, and honestly, that's fine. You know, it's up to you guys to develop it.
Oh yeah, hi. Do you also have like some option for analytics, like tracking which wallet gets connected the most or something?
We don't, but we actually thought about that. That would be actually a very cool feature to have. The reason we don't have that is because this isn't a very open source project. There's no backend. There's no, like, even though it was developed by WalletConnect, like this is a completely separate thing. That's why it's so popular, because it's kind of like free, open source, libre. Like nobody owns this. Nobody's tracking this. There's no analytics. But honestly, you could just like, after the Web3 model connect, you could just like look at which web provider you got, and then you just like track it yourself, you know. In theory, you could do that, but it's not built in. Yes.
Does it work in Svelte?
So this is a very, how do I say, isolated library. It's technically built in React, but it should work anywhere because it's rendered completely separate. You could have like a Vue.js app with this Web3 model, and it would work. So yes, I would say it works in Svelte. I've never tried personally, but I know there's an example in Vite, there's an example in Angular, there's an example in Vue. In Svelte, I never tried, but it should work. In PHP, it would work, right? Yeah. Any other questions?
What if you have an injected wallet that is not on your list?
That's a good question. It will show you like a little logo that says Web3 and just says connect to Web3 wallet. So it kind of just like defaulted to Web3 wallet. It has a fallback injected provider, but there's a huge list. It's very unlikely that happens unless you build your own. Yeah. Anything else? Can you pass the mic?
Yes, hi. A general question. Does it have to, WalletConnect, does it have to run in a browser, or can it run outside the browser?
No? Yeah, because I was saying if you're Chris, because we had a similar question in the booth before. Yes, WalletConnect, like Web3 model is for browsers, but WalletConnect can run anywhere. Like Web3 model, it only runs in browsers, but WalletConnect provider, you can run it as an Electron app, as a React Native app, as an iOS app, Android app, literally anywhere, honestly. We even had some people who developed like a Flutter plugin, but it wasn't actually developed by us, but we posted on the Discord chat if someone wants it. Yeah, so for example, if you want to do like a Node.js, like I remember there was someone who did a CLI terminal that would like connect the wallet with WalletConnect, and it would just like display the QR code in terminal, and it would work. So yes, the JavaScript library is what's called isomorphic, so it will work wherever. Any other questions?
Just the language library is obligatory JavaScript, or?
So talking about WalletConnect specifically, the library that I showed is a JavaScript library that will run in React Native, Electron, Node.js, browser. But then you have the Kotlin library, which runs on Android, and then you have the Swift library, which runs on iOS. And there's even a C# library that runs for Unity. And then there's the Flutter one the Dart one for Flutter. So if you're thinking about another one, no, there's no more. There was someone who did like a 1 weekend project and write it in Rust, but it was not maintained for like 3 years, so I wouldn't recommend it.
So how does the flow differ on a mobile app? And how can you optimize that part?
So you're saying like what it would look like if Web3 model was on a mobile app? I mean, it would look like the same, and then you would have like the user selected. And for example, for Wallet Connect, actually, I can try to emulate it. Let's try to emulate that. Give me a sec.
Does it have styles defined for mobile?
A style? Well, yeah, it's responsive. All right, so we have on the left Uniswap on mobile. Let's refresh it, just make sure it detects on mobile. We're gonna like change. Actually, I might need to do a hard reload. You know what? Just go full incognito. There you go. All right, now it's, why is it still there? We're gonna go Safari, guys. Okay, it's not there. Like Wallet Connect is very persistent. Actually, this is terrible here. I just need to go into here. No. Wipe that. Actually, that's very annoying. How do you disconnect from here? Oh, it's this guy. Because we used MetaMask before. So I kind of wish MetaMask had the disconnect button. You know what? I'm not going to use this one. I'm going to use this one. Okay. Boom. There you go. All right. This is how Wallet Connect would look on mobile. Wallet Connect doesn't use a QR code on mobile because it would be impossible. So the way it works is that you have these deep links, which will redirect you to the specific wallet on iOS. And on Android, this would actually look different with just like a one button because Android actually has a user prompt to select the app. And yeah, and then, you know, like for example, if I were to emulate it here, the URI actually just shows right on the right and you approve it and you would be able to do all the transactions because the QR code just has like this minimum information to actually establish the connection, and that can be represented either as a deep link or as a QR code. So yeah, that's how it would look like on that side. Any other questions? Well, then, oh, sorry.
Is it easy to use wallet providers instead of the Alchemy one when you want to, after you connected the wallet, when you want to call some smart contract functions?
So the question that you have is specifically compared to like Alchemy or like Infura, right? So remember there was this part here where I showed on the documentation for Wallet Connect that you can customize your RPC endpoints. That's when you actually have basically the Web3 provided for Wallet Connect proxying to your favorite RPC. Wallet Connect doesn't actually read smart contracts directly. You choose who actually reads the smart contracts. By default, we had Infura always, but then we added a custom RPC, and you can put like your Alchemy endpoints. So it will format the transaction reading from Alchemy or Infura or QuickNote, and then take that transaction and send it to the wallet. So only when the transaction or the message is ready to send to the wallet, then it would actually go through Wallet Connect protocol. Right? So you would have the exact same performance as if you're connecting directly with Alchemy, because we're just proxying to the wallet before going to sign.
So I have an app that logs in with Wallet Connect, but Apple rejected it because they don't like the flow of the user being taken out into MetaMask and then coming back in. Is there like a way to amend that problem?
Oh, that's actually the first time I heard that, actually. You know, the thing with Apple is that they have guidelines, but then they kind of just like pick and choose like someone to bully. Like, because honestly, I don't think that that should have been a problem, because there's literally wallets like Trust Wallet that they had to remove their dApp browser because Apple didn't like it. And then they just used Wallet Connect instead, and then they were like cool with it. So I don't know what particularly they were not liking about that, but if you go to the OpenSea app on mobile, like the native mobile app, they use Wallet Connect to connect it. Zerion also uses it. Zapper uses it. Even Twitter, with their new Twitter Blue feature of the NFT, they use Wallet Connect. So if they didn't reject Twitter, it's because they have favoritism, honestly.
For OpenSea, they have like an option where you just input your wallet and
Yeah.
then it logs them in.
Yeah.
I think my guess was that for that reason, they allowed it because there's another way to log in.
Yeah, but then you have other apps that don't do that. So, I mean, add another option for like just adding the address. Maybe they will pass it. Sometimes you just kind of have to play ball with them, you know, to just get it approved past the App Store. And like, you know, sometimes they leave like a scam app, but they don't leave your app. Like, so, you know, it's not perfect system. All right, guys, I think we covered pretty much all of it, and thanks a lot for all of your questions. I have some stress balls because it's going to be some very stressed times ahead of you for all the hacking and like late submissions that you guys are going to go through. So please take them. Yeah, and thanks a lot for coming, and I hope you guys use Wallet Connect. If you have any questions, please join me at the booth on the other side of the venue, and I'll be happy to help you guys. Thank you, everyone. We have some wallets in beta right now, and we want to move all the wallets in July.